Keep it simple has been the mantra, the foundation, the bedrock of my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing that philosophy played out to its absolute maximum. Not only is this part 3 of following along on the Marudo Karashigoi grow out, I'm going to break down the system, show you some of the pros and cons to keeping fish in this way, the results you can yield, and at the very end as a bonus, because these are the perfect batch of fish for it, I'm going to give you a detailed look at body shape and bone structure. It's going to be jam-packed with useful information. Let's get stuck into it, starting with a look at how these progressed, and we'll follow along with the rest as we go. We last did an update on these Karashigoi on the 12th of June. Links to both of the previous 2 videos are in the description. If you haven't seen them, they're a must watch. Now, this is one of my 1200 gallon ponds with a really simple, very simple setup, which we'll get into. For now, however, just check this out. Since that last selection, these have just gone off the charts. Back then on the 12th of June, they were 28 to 34 centimeters in range. God only knows where they're going to be at right now. Now, before we get into it, yes, they are Karashigoi. They grow with ease. The bit to this is just how many of these are being grown in such a small amount of water, yielding superb volume development, superb length gains with such a basic system. And it really is about as basic as it gets. So right now I'm going to get stuck into actually doing my selection on these. At the end we'll see where we're at size wise before we delve into everything else. So I'm going to start. The whole pond contains all Marudo fish, Ginrin Karashi, there's some Doitsu Karashi and plain Wagoi Karashigoi. The last selection was already quite severe with these, to the point we was trying to get some assessment on the gender. We'll see how accurate that was. With these I have no interest in trying to keep male Karashigoi. It's the females I want to focus on given the limited space. However, you can see regardless, the whole, the mixture, size, there's hardly any way of splitting between them right now. So from a quality perspective, if these were in a bigger pond, I'd actually be choosing to grow the whole lot right through further as it stands, but I have got to reduce numbers. I believe there was somewhere around 45 the last time. I'm going to aim for 25 to 30 today. We'll see where we end up. And that being the ones that will then keep to grow through to the actual final harvest of these. So right now I am going to assess the quality as we go along as well, but primarily you're going to see me checking the gender. Amongst these I just have one Ginrin Karashi that was sold to a client in here which needs to stay. Other than that, they're mine to decide what I want to do with. There we go. So customers was microchipped in this case. I think all the Doitsu ones in there are. So just identify that. Now this absolute weapon. So the customers has been identified. Back on the 30th of April, this was 24 cm. Now it really did kind of stand out for its size potential. It's not too far ahead of the others now, but it has still got a very big and impressive bone structure. Remarkable growth so far. I think I promised him I'd get it to about 40 cm. Looking at that, I'm guessing we're at about 45 now. What an absolute monster. You can see here in this one, it's got one of the amazing attributes that these can often have. It's not essential. Akame, red eyes. Really is interesting when you see it. I think it's pretty cool. Like I say, not essential. It's just a personal preference thing. Some people don't like it, but it is quite common throughout Karashigoi and Kigoi, especially from back in the day. This one, interestingly, somewhere it treads between the line of Ginrin Karashi, Ginrin Chagoi. Realistically, it's more Ginrin Chagoi right now, but quite an interesting colour. Really like its body setup as well. Obviously, Marudo produces both. The blood is all very similar as well. Honestly, from a quality perspective, there is nothing splitting these. We got that right at the last selection, that's for sure. There we go. I think I've done quite well there. 7 pieces retained. Carrying on my form of actually managing to be strict in order to maximise results. So now we're going to take a look at the Doitsu examples. Right, that's customers' fish out the way. Now I can focus on what I've got left in here. Just want to point out something. You may see a few fish with kind of dislodged scales along the way, but not sure there's any in here. Yes, here we go. So these big scale Doitsu fish, it's very common that you will get kind of this weird red inflammation around some of the scales. This isn't to be worried about. What tends to happen is they'll get little bits of shit caught under there. It causes a little bit of this. Sometimes it can just be a bit of trapped. Just literally by pushing it out like that, we can clear it and that'll settle. Sometimes you need to push it and the scale actually needs to come away. You can actually see it's happened on a few here. It is a process that'll kind of constantly keep happening and you'll find it just keeps growing back. One of the downsides actually to this type of scale pattern, but anything else, I think they're absolutely fantastic to look at. Just want you to be mindful of that. Just want to show you, so as I'm doing the selection, again with these quality level, there's nothing really to be looking at. What I am checking here is the gender. So first you can see there, first goater, but they are quite young. It's checking for males, primarily around the vent, looking for sperm. Now in this instance, we can actually see there that as we squeezed around the vent, we actually got the sperm out. You can see it here, which is completely confirming it. The other way, if we can actually get this on the camera, all down the front ray of the fin, it can be quite hard to catch, but there's all little drop, tiny, tiny spots. That's the oiboshi. In this case, you can really feel it, but generally, to confirm properly, I mean, by getting the sperm out, it's great, but not always in the initial early stages, as these fish are still quite young. It could just be that we managed to see the early signs of that. In this case, the oiboshi is really strong, but it could be that the early signs help us if we're not getting any sperm out of the vent. I've also been heavily checking the vent shape, but that's not completely settled in yet to where it's going to be. That one's exactly the same. Look, you can see the sperm firing out actually with them. Honestly, they're ready to go, these ones. And the fin, it's not quite as obvious with that. I can feel it more than I can see it. As well, it's feeling really rough around the gill there. Obviously, that's what they generally use to stimulate the female during spawning. So now we're on to the Wagoi. Absolute plain scale, the real monsters. The ones actually this year I'm most excited about. Got quite a few more of these, so I'm going to do them in 2 batches, but exactly the same process. I think if we just look as an overview with these, it's becoming quite clear which ones are pointing male and female just from looking at the bone structures, which is something we'll discuss more at the end of the video. This one here, male, this one, female. In this instance, it is having a profound... Now, with bone structure, you can get males that will have the same bone structure. In this instance, the male gene is slowing this one down and completely changed it, look. The difference there, bone structures in the head, that is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think I've ever had such a strong side-by-side comparison there of bone structure and the difference in power. Just to prove what I was just saying, that there is a male example as well, very clearly from the feel on the fin there, and that has got an identical bone structure to the female from the last shot, look. So really there, your male, female, please don't forget still the individual characteristics of the fish. They have exactly the same genetics, they're from the same parents. Bone structure and growth can be heavily dictated by that bone structure. In a head-to-head, it might just be at a certain point when eventually the bodies go down different tracks, but right now it'd be hard to split them from bone structure alone. Right, last but not least, Marudo Ginrin Chagoi. Retained 5 of these, 2 are customer fish already, including growing, so I'm going to identify those. But again, look, another, he really is dominating for me, this kind of Muji Mono single coloured space. They are fantastic this year. I had great results with them last year. Amazing colour. As Ginrins, they grow equally as well as the normal stuff. They're very impressive. Right, phase 1 completed. Quick size check, recount them back in, which will allow me just to transfer those fish over. And then we're going to have a talk about this system and how they've got, or what they've lived in to achieve the results that they've got to. Remember, 12th of June, 28 to 34 cm. Today it's the 9th of August. Let's have a look where we're at. The one bit I've impressed myself with is I have kept well within, actually the lower end of the planned stocking level. There really are some savage beasts in here. So right now, just trying to look biggest to smallest. So I have that probably, let's call it 39, let's go a bit under. And at this crazy end, we're hitting 45, just over, so we'll call that 45. The progression has been amazing, and you can see, look, they're really not lacking volume. I do believe if they were in one of my big ponds, the volume would be much more substantial. We've still got time for that. Before we dive into taking a closer look at the system, I just want to share with you the plan with these from now on. So, I've had to write this down because there's no chance of me remembering it. However, 27 fish have gone back in. I'm dead happy with that. The plan right now is that they will grow. They'll stay in there through to roughly probably around the end of September or into early October before a final harvest. At that point, I'm not actually sure what I'll do with them. Customer fish by the end of September will be harvested and gone. Mine, I'm not sure whether in the end I'll end up with a bigger pond to push them harder through winter. I don't know. But for now, the stats since last time, on the 12th of June, we're 28 to 34 cm. There's actually 54 fish in this pond today, as we've harvested it out, and we've got the quantity that's gone back in now this time, the 27. 28 to 34 cm last time. It's been slightly just over 8 weeks, and we're currently at 39 to 45 cm. So that means that we've done on average 11 centimeters of growth in that time. Now my average I always expect is around 1 cm per week. You can tell they massively exceeded that. For me, there's no other explanation. I've done nothing different. That is the genetics and the nature of Karashigoi is that uplift above the averages. So that I'm dead happy with, absolutely remarkable. One other change I'm going to make as of today, they're going to go on to sinking pellet because of the nature of how they are feeding quite aggressively. I just want to prevent any further scale damage. There was a bit too many today where they've knocked the odd scale. I want to stop that from happening, and sinking pellet is a good way of doing it, and it's quite easy to manage in these ponds. So that's it, that's the plan. We're not going to touch it anymore. Let's dive in and actually have a look at the system and see how it ties in to my keep it simple mantra to deliver these incredible results. I've already shown you the difference. Keep it simple delivers me that centimetre a week quite comfortably. Yes, they are Karashigoi. I'm not overhyping this. That's why the extra growths come in. But that being said, there's some crazy numbers behind all this, so let's take a look. Right, so this system, roughly 1,200 gallons of water. It's very approximately around 6,000 litres. There's a single bottom drain, which leads through to our homemade system here, as you can see. One block built chamber that's divided. This comes up at the bottom through into this brush chamber. Now I think we've got about 16 brushes in there altogether. Then it very simply passes through that 4-inch connection into a drilled or slotted 4-inch pipe next door. And next door there is a fluid bed full of original K1 media, and there's approximately 300 litres. So there is a big loading of media. The air diffusion within that is actually a homemade one that's based on that of the Nexus, the best way. I'm going to be doing a video soon about fluid bed diffusers because I feel like they're being done massively wrong at minute to get optimal performance. That one's built like that, and then in the bottom of that chamber, because this was a retrofit job, sits the pump. It's not ideal, but it's all I had to work with and the only way around it. The heating system is completely independent, but it uses a heat exchanger that's also sat in that fluid bed. Now the pump in there is an Aquamax Eco 6000. They are my pump of choice, the Aquamax across the whole site. That then pumps up out of there through 15 watt UV, because we roughly work on about 10 watts per 1,000 gallon as a quota for clarity. So 15 watt is more than enough. And then you can see there the very old, also equally reliable AirTech 130. Now the AirTech is actually the only source of aeration driving the fluid bed, and that is the only source of aeration for the entire pond, as you can see. Again, I'm not going to dive too much into that now either, but bearing in mind the extreme conditions of these greenhouses, it actually generally works incredibly well. Been tested a little bit this year, but that's how that's run for a very long time. And then we're obviously, as we come out the UV, we're simply just straight back into the pond. One of the big things in these systems that I think has been fundamental is actually the spray bar return. Now what that does, the way that's angled right now, yes, we're creating all that surface agitation there, which helps with aeration, but it also helps with degassing. The reason it's actually pointing up slightly at the minute is to allow it more contact with the surface and create a heavier bubbling as it lands. That allows it to take in more oxygen, but also, very importantly, allows more stuff, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, etc., to gas off. I don't actually, as it stands, have any aeration within the ponds for any of these, and it actually holds out incredibly well. It's one directional, as you can see, one end to the other, and as well as being useful from an aeration and degassing perspective, the spray bar also adds a fantastic current to the pond, which is very important to keep the movement in there. Other than that, that is as simple as it gets, in my opinion. Nothing complicated, very little to break, other than the electrical stuff, which is all very reliable gear. I don't want to spend money twice. I'm very tight, so I want the best air pumps, I want the best water pumps, and they need to be reliable. I've been through phases. Please never forget when I'm giving you advice, there's not a lot of equipment, brands, things I haven't done here over 20 odd years that someone, yourself watching, is probably never going to get to do or try. I haven't just been like, had the best from day one. It's something I've had to work towards. There's pumps I've tried in here that, you know, air pumps that haven't stood the intense heat conditions in summer, water pumps that have been shite and just earth and caused constant electrical issues. It's absolutely mad. The last bit, and one of my most favourite bits of equipment, is the automatic feeder. Now, this is one of the Japanese Fukushin models. These are my absolute favourite. They are expensive when brought over to the UK, but they give me the ultimate control. For you guys, a lot of the things that make these important for me probably won't be issues for you over time. One of the main things for me is the level of control and how I can set these. The timing of the feeders is set in seconds, which is crucial, so I can give small incremental feeds, and it doesn't, when I'm using small pellet in particular, it doesn't fire too much out. When you've got these set bars on some models, particularly the JBL ones I use, one bar of a small pellet is often too much for the initial feeding, and the incremental increases are super important. They need to be gradual. So that's the system. The pump is 6,000 litres an hour. So obviously from where I'm at, I generally, most of these systems I believe operate on around once every 2 hours. It's probably a little bit more with that, but not forgetting we'll get head loss as we pass through the UV and out through the spray bar as well. So roughly we're turning over once every 2 hours, maybe a little bit more within the system, but that's what we've got, nothing crazy whatsoever. Results wise, I don't need to tell you, you've literally seen it now over the course of 3 videos, what this has done. Maintenance wise, I don't believe it's all that much, certainly for what that actually costs. These now generally used to be done once a week, where the chamber would be emptied, brushes cleaned down, and the bottom drain purged. Now, because we've got more hands on deck, it's being done twice a week. It just further improves the efficiency, but it's a really quick process, just knocking off the brushes, emptying the chamber, purging the drain. It works a treat. That used to be, and still is for somebody, an enjoyable part of the hobby. I know with my fish tanks, I love filter maintenance day. Absolutely love it. I get that lives get busier, but what you want your hobby to have tasks where you can disconnect. What I absolutely love about it is it's fail proof. It can't go wrong. No moving parts, electrical parts, anything like that. And brushes, I think, are underestimated for how efficient they actually are. Now, drawbacks for me, potential drawbacks in this system, if you look right now, if we actually look into the water, they've been 2 days off the food. There's no windows here, so we're not having that view. That view, I believe, for windows has really made people too obsessed with water clarity that's just completely over the top. But if we really look, the clarity itself is really not that bad. Even when the food is on, and we're talking extreme amounts of food, it doesn't really alter from that. The staining in the water is nothing to do with that filter. The staining is from organic load, and that's how I choose to run these. I keep water changing to a minimum because I don't want too much fresh water interfering with the environment and changing it too much. I like the K1 to be the driver of creating the ecosystem without too much interference, because when K1 in a fluid bed is done right, it creates the optimal ecosystem. The only water changing done is from the interval maintenance of the brush chamber. It's the topping up after that twice a week, and that is it. So the drawbacks for me with that, yes, there's a little bit more hands-on maintenance, but I think that's outweighed by costs, and generally that's not for me really anything to do with performance. It's just to do with time. Performance, if we look, I could correct this water very quickly by water changing more. Simple as that. You'll get better clarity. We'll soon flush out them organics. And just consider my stocking level, 50 plus fish, 54 fish of 40 to 45 centimetres come out of this pond today. The feed amount is huge. From the settings that are on there, that'll be around a kilo per day, if not a little bit more. And it's been phenomenal. The one thing we keep on top of is KH. We burn through KH like crazy. That's checked and monitored and adjusted twice a week. Other than that, one of the real secrets of my keep it simple mantra is keeping information, the amount of information coming in as little as possible. All the water tests are done very intermittently, and only if I suspect there's a problem and something has gone too far. Now that whole process does rely on having a deep understanding and deep experience. I will put that out there right now, but it works. You've seen the results right now, and a lot of koi keepers are at that kind of level. Say nothing to go wrong, we're getting the results. KH is the glue of the system. If generally I know if I keep on top of that, everything's good, but I generally know from the fish behavior if something's changed. That did happen recently during the big heat wave that we had. Water temperatures got excessive, and because of the amount of big fish in there, in the evening around 4 o'clock, oxygen became very hard to manage. As the algae and everything started to respire and started taking in oxygen out the water, it obviously just tipped things a little bit too much. But not only that, getting gas out was an issue. The environment here also didn't help because we'd not got the airflow to actually contact and get fresher air at the water surface. So we know the issues there. I am going to rectify that because I want a little bit more current in here and just the ability to push a little bit more gas off and get a bit more surface movement. So I am now going to be adding one additional air pump that's going to drive an air bar in that. But without that, you've seen where we've got so far. I believe too much obsessing about clarity, too much information from too frequent water testing, digital testers especially, are my enemy. They do my head in. That is way too much information. And then systems that can just fail, go wrong, cause problems. The real key to the keep it simple process is that I also get ultimate consistency. That consistency with water temperature, it does play a big part in this. Consistent heat at the right level, consistent food from the feeder, and consistent, the filtration is not dipping in and out. It's there, it's being built up, and keeping that KH stable is what leads to these results. And for me right now, with that pond and my experience, it's effortless. So that's that. Feel free, if you've got any questions about all that, or let me know your thoughts in the comments. And with that, we're going to move on now for a little quick lesson in body shape and bone structure, because these are the perfect examples to really make it crystal clear for you. Right, so body shape and bone structure. I've often said, and you'll catch it on previous videos, it's actually important to separate the two, because one can be manipulated, the other can never be changed. Bone structure is there from day one. It's the outline of the fish, it's the outline of the body, it's the skeleton that the body shape, the fat and the muscle sits within, and that's what can be manipulated. When you learn to read bone structure well, even in fish that are relatively small, you can understand what type of body they'll eventually have and what the growth potential might be. Now, when you're new to the hobby especially, and even those more advanced, it takes a lot to train your eye to truly look past pattern and everything really visual you see in front, to truly look beyond and see the detailed elements of body shape and bone structure. With Karashigoi, however, being a single coloured fish, it gets a little bit easier, and it's really good that today there's some fantastic examples in here to draw some very direct comparisons. So let's have a look in the bowl and break down what's in front of me. Right, let's start with bone structure and a direct comparison here. Now I'm actually going to show you the two elements that I touched upon earlier in the video. First of all, directly between two male examples. Just look at that, side by side, bone structure. We're talking about head, backbone, peduncle kind of height and width, and it's where we're at. But just look, I mean, they're both a substantial size. This is what you really have to remember with this. Neither of these fish are alike, but there's probably a good 5 cm of difference, and there's good reason. And a lot of this stuff's going to make a bigger difference as they get bigger. But just direct now, look, the mouth's wider, the head's wider, it's longer. They've both got prominent backbones, but look at the difference in thickness. This body, this one on the right, has got more ability to carry more weight and more size as it grows older. Don't mistake though, this one will still grow, but it won't look as powerful and it won't achieve the same end size as that fish. Even this back, they're both male. Given this bone structure, this is still going to be an absolute monster later on, whereas that one's going to have a cap to it. Now, when we actually bring this in, we touched upon this. Right now, this fish on the left, or my left, your right, is female. That one's male. I mean, look at them. They're like twins, them two. Nothing to split between them. They are different genders. I believe with those two fish, they'll actually grow with identical bodies and at pretty much the same rate, pace, same style of body, because the structures, they've got the same genetics and there's nothing to split between those two bone structures. Look, even thickness at the peduncle, they're pretty much like for like, the same length even. It's crazy. So if you give them the same environmental conditions, they're just going to go and go and go. No doubt about it for me. So that's your structure element to it. The big difference in the next bit I want to look at is the difference between shape and bone structure. Because if we actually look at the shape of this one right now, it's not carrying masses of volume. That's why you're a little bit more, the backbone's a little bit more prominent, poking out, because you're yet to get this muscular growth where the fat and the muscle and everything fills out and you get the volume. That, however, is another indicator of the type of body that's just going to grow and get the really, really big sizes. They can't be too heavy, too young. You need the structure elements prominent, and that weight and volume is going to come later when they've got a lot of growing out of the way. Now, if we look at this example, this is another male piece. You actually see it's got a richer colour as well, which is a bit more normal for a male example. But the actual body of this one is interesting because the bone structure is actually good. But again, if you compare the heads directly, there's a huge, huge difference. But if you look at this one in isolation, you would say it's got a fantastic head shape, and it has. It's got a prominent backbone. Again, part of the structure is the side profile and the height. That isn't spoken about enough, because when all this weight comes, it's got to go somewhere, and we want it to be able to go upwards and outwards. If you haven't got the height at the top, it generally pushes the weight downwards, creating that kind of gut that we don't want to see. So you can see in isolation it's got a great structure, but right now, and it has, please don't forget that, that's a fish that will achieve a nice size as well. But right now we would say the body of this is looking better. It's got a fuller body, there's more volume all round compared with these. And that's just the difference. That doesn't worry me. If I took that out now, stopped feeding it and kept that going very quickly, the body volume on that will overtake that one. It's easily manipulated body volume. If you even get them on the wrong diet, you know, the wrong balance in the food, they'll start creating more weight and more mass around that bottom region, which we don't want, which is why diet is incredibly important. So all those elements, look, And please do remember that as well, you know, in isolation, there's always generally a bigger fish. In every batch it's going to happen, but they're actually two very good examples. They're just different, and it depends what you want out of it. Please don't ever forget that in all this. You've still got to like the fish that you choose. And with the body type this has, it's always probably going to be more powerful and stocky looking. That fish is going to have a richer colour than that one, always. So if they're the points that appeal, then that's probably more the fish for you versus that one. So I hope that's made that clear. There's some really, really great comparisons there with those fish, and I think it just made a nice, easy explanation to actually really demonstrate the differences there between bone structure, body shape, and then different bone structures and body shapes as well. So I hope you found that educational and enjoyed the update on the Karashigoi. At this time, that batch overall is going to be released out to our wholesale clients. They've not had much opportunity at these, so there is no release on these today, unfortunately for you guys. However, the ones still in the pond will be coming later this year. I hope for those of you who did get them from our earlier batches, they're doing equally as well. Absolutely blown me away. I also hope that you found the video useful and educational as well. There'll be at least one more part to come in this journey, and possibly another follow-up into next year. For now, I'm going to get everything reset on these. The fish that have been moved out today need putting in their new home, and the feeder needs to be adjusted, diet changed, get them back on it and see where we can get. The plan now with that low stocking is to see what we can actually achieve in this environment. I've never just kept them through. At this point, I normally move them to a bigger pond to maximize it, but let's see what we can truly do with an end-to-end growing season in one of these keep it simple 1200 gallon ponds.